Well, hey everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil. You know, when 4-year-old Madeline McCann disappeared 17 years ago, the year was 2007, three questions crossed everyone's mind, frankly, in many of the lips. How did this happen? Who's responsible for this abduction? And how can we reduce the chance that this kind of thing might happen to us or someone we love? I hope you'll catch my full video on this discussion, but for now, I want to talk about the Victim Risk Continuum. Question number 3, how can we reduce the chance of this kind of horrible thing happening to us or a loved one? I want to start out with this risk continuum. It was something that was developed by the FBI many years ago, but my investigative companion, Greg Cooper, and I worked on it and refined this, and over the years I've used it on many different kinds of criminal cases. In fact, I think if it had been used in the McCann case, somebody like mom and dad may not have been terrorized by public opinion and public outcry and even law enforcement efforts. And here's why. I'm going to explain it. On this screen you can see the continuum. It shows low-risk victims and high-risk victims. Now, a high-risk victim is where we're going to start. This might be the kind of people that you expect to get into trouble in the criminal justice system and to be victimized, quite frankly. This type of victim, a high-risk victim, could be considered someone like a transient, a drug dealer, or somebody working in the sex trade industry. Now, on the low end of the risk continuum, you have people that really have a really small circle of influence around them. Children, like Madeline McCann, fit perfectly into this low-risk continuum. And here's why this is so important. As we look at this, again, think about a low-risk victim as someone who has a small number of people who are going to have access to them. A child stays at home. If the child goes somewhere, they're traveling with the parent, they're being protected and watched over. Again, anyone who might have access to them is going to be people that are generally family members, people who are close neighbors or associates, maybe a babysitter who's been vetted and approved for those kinds of services. Now, what's been learned after examining thousands and thousands of criminal cases, including abductions, is that high-risk individuals are most likely to be perpetrated against by a stranger, somebody they don't know. And when they are victimized, it's an opportunistic crime, like a truck driver who's driving by and sees a hitchhiker and picks up that hitchhiker and then victimizes them. In fact, you can go back to my video on Robert Ben Rhodes and learn more about that very kind of opportunistic predator out preying on victims along the nation's highways and byways. In a sex trade worker position, this might be someone that's down looking for a sex trade worker, and they're unknown to that person because of the interactions. They then have them in a position where they can control them and victimize them. Now, on the low risk end of the spectrum, what we've learned is that the suspects in these kinds of cases are usually known to the victim, or at least they know who the victim is. Think of the Elizabeth Smart case. She didn't know the predator that assaulted her and kidnapped her and kept her hostage for nearly a year, but the predator knew her through showing up and doing work projects around the house, perhaps through window peeking and other things. But what we know is that low-risk victims are usually perpetrated on by someone who's known to them. And here's the thing that's kind of scary. They are a target of whatever that aggression is. Now, think about the Madeline McCann case. Again, the natural thing would be to think that the parents may have had something to do with this because this is a low-risk child. The parents are known. They obviously have very intimate control of the child. And if that were the case, it would make sense that they are at least looked at and vetted. In this particular case, they were vetted sometime later, and that created a lot of problem. And of course, the true crime community and the media just persecuted these parents because of what happened. Well, there are a couple of things that can influence a victim's position on the risk continuum. And those three things are circumstances, situations, and the environment. And that can propel a low-risk victim like Madeleine McCann into a high-risk situation. And I think that's what happened here. And this is what we know. We know, for instance, that at that community where the family was staying on holiday at the resort, there are reports now out in the media that suggest that there were a number of inappropriate things going on in the rental units that were there. For instance, we know that an unknown male showed up at the door of one family saying that they were there hoping to collect money for an orphanage, but looked right past the mother who answered the door at the children that were inside, kind of fixated on the children. There were burglaries that were going on and other things that some have classified as sexual inappropriateness going on by strangers within the community. That starts to elevate the risk of the children who are out in the area if predators are there hunting for victims. Now, the situation started to deteriorate when mom and dad chose to start leaving the children in the hotel room asleep at the end of the day while they went out to meet with the friends that they had traveled with away from the apartment. And most importantly, that they were leaving the apartment door, the hotel door, unlocked, taking turns about every 30 minutes to have one of the group of adults go back and check the children to make sure that they were still sleeping soundly. This raises the level of risk for that individual. And then, of course, we know that there was an extended period of time where the children were left unattended and a predator could have slipped in. Now, the question became, did the parents have something to do with this? And it would be less likely that that were the case. But as we talk about this and we think about the risk continuum, we can see how little Maddie's risk increased based on circumstance, situation, and environment. Some may challenge that it was poor choices by mom and dad. Others may say that it was the bad misfortune that there was a predator lurking in the dark. Nonetheless, this is something that we can think about in our own situations to reduce our own risk of being victimized by someone. What could have been done? Absolutely keeping closer contact with the children could have reduced the risk of this happening. Absolutely keeping the doors to the hotel room locked would have reduced the risk of this child being victimized. We learned through the course of this investigation that the family also posted a note with hotel staff saying that they wanted to have a table where they could see the kids' rooms from the restaurant area where they were meeting with friends to have tapas and drinks. Now, this made it very clear to anyone working in the hotel, including perhaps someone who may have had a nefarious reason for working there, like setting up for human trafficking of other predators in the area, information. It became known to everyone that the families weren't with their children, that they were nearly an American football field away when little Maddie disappeared. Can we reduce our risk? Absolutely. Are there still going to be chances where suspects get a hold of our most prized possessions and can sneak off? The risk will always be there, and so we need to remain ever vigilant. Hey, I hope this was helpful for you in thinking about how the victim risk continuum and evaluating your circumstances can help you reduce your own level of risk and the risk level of your loved ones. And I hope it helps you in your personal crime sleuthing as you look at these kinds of criminal cases that we study here on Profiling Evil. Make sure that you check out the Madeleine McCann story that we put on And also check our other stories to get more information. You might consider joining the Profiling Evil Academy. It's a place where you're going to get instruction like this and learn a little more about the criminal investigative process, and hopefully a whole lot more insight to help you in your personal sleuthing. You can join for as little as $1.99 a month, or you can get the Academy level where you get a whole lot more for just a little more, $4.99 a month. And it really helps us roll out quality content at Profiling Evil. So thanks for your support, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.